Jackie, for more on President Biden's time at the G7 summit, let's bring in Tennessee Republican Senator and member of the Foreign Relations and Appropriations Committees, Bill Hagerty. Senator, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you, Mike. Thank you.
The focus so far at the G7 seems to be recovering from COVID, climate change, that's right, and reversing President Trump's policies. Your assessment of the G7 so far?
Well, when they talk about cooperation, I think what they're really talking about is American capitulation. You know, they don't like the America First policies that President Trump put forward, but it was better for America and it was better for the entire world. American strength is exactly what we need right now, standing up to Russia, standing up to Iran, standing up to China. And when we talk about the new Biden policies, it looks a lot more like America Last to me.
Among the concerns right now, or this comes as we've had serious hacks of infrastructure and American interests. How should President Biden handle that critical issue at this summit?
He should press very hard against it, and we know where the hacks have originated. Look, we cannot let Vladimir Putin skate on this one. Putin has complete control over what happened inside of Russia, and I heard President Biden try to parse this and say that, well, it was a Russian company, but, you know, not hold the Russian government accountable, not hold the Russian leader accountable. I think the G7 is frankly being overshadowed completely by what is going to happen next week when Biden does meet with Putin. And Biden's going into this in a position of weakness. Look, he capitulated on the START treaty at the very beginning with Russia. Now he's turned around and allowed them to finish the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Look, that project was categorized as a malign influence project by the Trump administration. I served in that administration. This is a huge mistake to walk into this meeting in a position of weakness, and I think that's what all of the G7 leaders are wondering about. How will Biden and Putin manage this meeting?
How should he address Putin? How should he get the upper hand, or is that even possible?
Well, he needs to address it from a position of strength, but when you look at what's happening here in our own nation, we have a border crisis that Biden has created. You look at what's happening with Iran right now. He's appeasing the world's largest state sponsor of terror, talking about giving tens of billions of dollars to Iran. Look at what's just happened in Israel. This is all part and parcel of a weak American policy. The Chinese are looking at this. They see our Biden budget come forward that in net terms, after inflation, actually reduces expenditures on our defense, on homeland security at a time when we should be building up. China certainly is. China's now got more ships than we do. So Putin is looking at this and saying, is America's strength being reflected at all in this administration? Biden needs to stand tough, but his budget, his other priorities need to show toughness as well.
Speaking of China, today's focus there is China. How should the United States and some of the wealthiest economies in the world deal with Beijing?
Beijing continues to press its influence all over the world. You know, I was U.S. ambassador to Japan before becoming a member of the United States Senate. I saw this up close and personal. Beijing is pushing militarily. They're pushing economically, as we all know. They're pushing diplomatically as they go in and create their influence in the WHO and in the United Nations. We've got to push back at every front, and our allies need to be with us on this. I hope that President Biden continues to push this and continues to reach out to our allies to work with us in the same direction, because China is a threat to every nation on this planet.
How critical is a transparent probe into the origins of COVID, which obviously has taken millions of lives around the world and devastated the global economy?
I think it's absolutely critical, and we certainly can't rely on the WHO to do it. You saw exactly what happened before. China has such massive influence there. It's really amazing, the fact that they are willing to look the other way. The biggest problem, though, is that this got covered up, and it's now been well more than a year. It's going to be difficult to get to the bottom of this, but we absolutely should be pushing to do just that.
Obviously, President Trump had a very different approach on foreign relations. Also, back here at home, it seems a little clubbier with President Biden there. Does that make you think that they might actually get some things done?
It's hard to say. What President Trump did was make the European leaders feel uncomfortable. He asked them to step up. He asked them to actually fulfill their responsibilities and their obligations under NATO. They did not like that. But that's precisely what we need to do. We need strong allies. We don't need to continue to appease them and let them skate and America continue to pick up the tab. Strong allies will make for a stronger world, and I think President Trump was absolutely right to push in that direction.
Speaking of that alliance, you've also got NATO. Are you confident that NATO is up to addressing some of the foreign concerns that we have right now?
Well, with Nord Stream 2, we're weakening NATO's position as we speak. Allowing that pipeline to be completed, again, puts Russia in an advantageous position against certainly allies like Ukraine, Poland, but also the European nations that are protected and have been through NATO. That's the entire purpose of NATO, is national security for that region. And Biden administration allowing Nord Stream 2 to move forward, I think absolutely weakens that. So we're taking actions right now that are detrimental, that are contrary to our position in NATO.
Senator Bill Hagerty of the great state of Tennessee. Senator,
great to be with you, Mike.
Many thanks for your time.
Thank you.